What's a book you've read that felt less like reading and more like having a long, soul-bearing conversation with an old friend?
For me, that's The Little Prince. I know it's technically a children's book, but every time I revisit it, it peels back another layer of adulthood I wasn't ready to face before.
That's such a beautiful choice. I first read it in French class, and honestly, I was just trying to survive the vocabulary. It wasn't until I picked up the English translation years later that the story completely sucker punched me.
Sucker punched, a great phrase. It means something hits you emotionally out of nowhere, and that book does exactly that. You think you're reading a whimsical tale about a boy from an asteroid, and suddenly you're weeping over a fox.
That fox wrecked me. When he says, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." I had to put the book down and just sit with it. It felt like the author had been eavesdropping on my own life.
And that's the hallmark of a timeless book. It doesn't just tell you a story, it holds up a mirror. For listeners, hallmark means a typical feature or quality, and that line about seeing with the heart is one of those truths that feels obvious only after someone articulates it for you.
Articulates, to express something clearly and effectively. And Antoine de Saint-Exupéry articulated loneliness and love so simply that it bypasses your brain and goes straight to your chest. Do you have a particular character that resonates most with you?
The lamplighter, surprisingly. He's so consumed by a senseless rule that he can't stop to rest, and he's utterly alone. It's a subtle commentary on how we sometimes chain ourselves to obligations that lose all meaning. That hit closer to home than I'd like to admit.
That's a deep cut. Most people gravitate toward the rose or the fox, but the lamplighter, that's someone trapped in a loop. A lot of us can relate to that, especially in our work lives. It's an allegory for burnout.
Exactly. An allegory is a story with a hidden meaning, usually a moral or political one. And Saint-Exupéry was a master of using these tiny, strange characters to hold up a magnifying glass to society. It's why the book works for a 7-year-old and a 70-year-old simultaneously.
That's the magic of layered storytelling. Speaking of which, my favorite book does something similar, but through a completely different lens. It's a fantasy novel called The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Have you read it?
I haven't, but I've seen it everywhere. It's got that gorgeous cover with the little figures standing on a hill. I'll admit, I did judge that book by its cover. I assumed it would be a light, cozy read without much bite.
And there's our first idiom of the day. Don't judge a book by its cover. It means you shouldn't assess something's value based solely on its appearance. In this case, the cozy cover is a bit of a Trojan horse because the book tackles prejudice, systemic fear, and found family with a surprising amount of depth.
Found family is such a wonderful concept. It refers to people who aren't related by blood, but who become your family through love and choice. It's a thread that runs through a lot of modern literature, and it sounds like this book is a prime example.
It really is. The protagonist is a caseworker named Linus Baker, who oversees orphanages for magical children. He's a buttoned-up, by-the-book bureaucrat sent to inspect a particularly unusual island orphanage. What starts as a routine job turns into a journey that completely unravels his worldview.
By the book means strictly following the rules, and unravels here means it slowly dismantles. I love a character who starts off rigid and gradually softens. It's so satisfying to watch someone finally let go of the armor they've been clutching for decades.
And Klune writes that transformation with so much tenderness and humor. There's a child named Lucy who is the Antichrist, and he has this darkly hilarious sense of humor. The dialogue made me laugh out loud on the subway, which is the highest compliment I can give.
Public transport laughter is the ultimate litmus test for a book's comedy. A litmus test is a way of decisively checking the quality of something. If a book can make you forget you're squished between strangers, that's a winner.
Exactly. And beneath the humor, it's asking a really profound question. Why are we so afraid of people who are different from us? It's a book about unlearning prejudice, and it does it without ever becoming preachy. It just wraps the message in a warm hug.
That's a tightrope walk. If a story gets too preachy, it feels like a lecture. If it's too subtle, the point gets lost.
tightrope walk is a metaphor for balancing two difficult things perfectly. It sounds like Clune earned that balance.
He absolutely did. And the romantic subplot between Linus and the orphanage master Arthur is one of the most gentle, believable slow burns I've ever read. They're two middle-aged men who've been lonely their whole lives, and they're so careful with each other's hearts.
A slow burn is a relationship that develops gradually, often over a long period. It's the opposite of love at first sight. Those are my favorite kinds of love stories because they feel earned. You've witnessed the foundation being built, brick by brick.
That's a beautiful metaphor, and it connects back to The Little Prince in an interesting way. Both books argue that love isn't a lightning strike. It's the time and care you invest that makes someone unique and precious to you. It is the time you have wasted for your rose that makes your rose so important.
When you quote that line, it's a gut punch every single time. Saint-Exupéry understood that devotion is an active, daily choice. We throw around the phrase, I love you, but that book shows love as a practice of tending, watering, and sheltering, sometimes from the cold, sometimes from your own flaws.
Tending, to care for or look after. That's a lovely, gentle verb. And it applies to reading habits too, doesn't it? The books we love most are the ones we've tended to over the years, rereading them at different stages of life and finding new nourishment each time.
Nourishment for the mind. I often say that certain books are like comfort food, while others are like a challenging, multi-course meal. The Little Prince is that rare book that manages to be both. It's a cup of warm broth and a philosophical thesis wrapped in watercolor illustrations.
Now I'm hungry and introspective. But it's true. A great book nourishes you on multiple levels. It can also expand your emotional vocabulary. When I read Cerulean Sea, I remember feeling something I didn't have a word for, and then Linus would describe it perfectly, and it felt like a key turning in a lock.
That's exactly what language learning is about. You encounter a new word that describes a feeling you've always had but couldn't name. It's like a fog clearing. For our listeners, that's a great reason to read in English. You'll find words that unlock parts of your own experience you never had the tools to articulate.
And those words tend to stick. I learned the phrase, at a loss for words, from a book, and I use it constantly. It means you're so surprised or emotional that you can't think of what to say. Context makes the phrase memorable because you're living the scene alongside the character.
Absolutely. Context anchors vocabulary. Anchor means to fix firmly. When a character is standing in the rain, completely heartbroken and at a loss for words, that image glues the phrase to your memory far better than any flashcard ever could.
Flashcards have their place, but emotion is a superglue. That's actually why I'm drawn to books with a strong emotional core, even if the language is relatively simple. The Little Prince uses very straightforward vocabulary, but the sentences carry the weight of a lifetime.
It's a masterclass in simplicity. Writers often say it's much harder to write simply than to write in a complex, flowery style. Flowery means using a lot of elaborate words. Saint-Exupéry strips it all back to the bone, and what's left is pure, startling truth.
Strips it back to the bone. That idiom means removing everything non-essential, and that's something intermediate English learners can really appreciate. You don't need to understand every complex grammatical structure to be moved by a powerful, simple sentence.
Right, like you become responsible forever for what you have tamed. Every word in that sentence is basic vocabulary, but the meaning is colossal. It's a lesson in emotional accountability. As a reader and a human, that's a truth you can't unsee.
And it's a truth you can apply to relationships, to pets, to any living thing you've invested your heart in. That's the gift of a book. It gives you a lens through which to examine your own life. You find yourself thinking, am I a fox? Am I a lamplighter? Am I a Linus?
I ask myself the lamplighter question too often for comfort. But seriously, that self-interrogation is how we grow. A favorite book is like a best friend who isn't afraid to ask you the hard questions and then sit with you in silence while you wrestle with the answer.
Wrestle with, to struggle or grapple with a difficult question or decision. And sometimes we don't find the answer immediately. I finished Cerulean Sea and felt a quiet sadness for a whole week, not because it ended badly, but because I missed the characters like real people.
That's what we call a book hangover. That bittersweet feeling when you're still living in the world of the story and the real world feels a bit muted. I had a monumental book hangover after The Little Prince. I walked around looking at the stars differently, wondering which one was the prince's home.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it ties back to that idea that what's essential is invisible. The stars become a symbol of connection. It's not just a celestial object. It's a memory, a laugh, a person. That's the alchemy of metaphor.
Alchemy is the old practice of trying to turn ordinary metal into gold. In literature, it's used figuratively to mean a seemingly magical process of transformation. A simple star transforms into a symbol of enduring love. That's the writer's alchemy at work.
I'm going to steal that phrase. Speaking of transformation, do you ever feel like a book has the power to alter your mood in real time? If I'm feeling cynical, Cerulean Sea acts like an antidote. It's aggressively kind in the best possible way.
Aggressively kind is a fantastic oxymoron. It's kind of relentless optimism that dares you to remain cynical. I have a similar relationship with The Little Prince. When the world feels too loud and transactional, the prince's gentle curiosity recalibrates my entire perspective.
Recalibrates, to adjust or reset something precisely. A good book can recalibrate your emotional compass. That's why I believe in rereading. Some people say life's too short to read a book twice, but I think life's too long to only experience a masterpiece once.
I'm fully on board with that. The first read is about plot. The second is about layers. The third is about yourself. Each pass peels back a new dimension. With The Little Prince, I've read it maybe 6 times, and I always stumble on a sentence that I swear wasn't there before.
I have that same experience. It's as if the book matures along with you. When I first read Cerulean Sea, I focused on the romance. When I reread it during a period of burnout, the theme of self-compassion nearly broke me. The book hadn't changed. My lens had.
That's a powerful reframing. Lens here means your perspective or point of view. This is why book clubs are so enriching. 10 people can read the same book and each will have a completely different take, all because of their unique lenses.
And sharing those takes is how we sharpen our communication skills. For English learners, a book club is a brilliant idea. You're practicing summarizing, expressing opinions, and even politely disagreeing, like saying, I see it differently because.
Perfect. I see it differently is a respectful way to disagree without shutting the other person down. Too often, language learners are taught to argue to win, but the best discussions are about exploration, not victory. It's a collaboration.
Collaborative conversations. That's what we're doing right now, and it's exactly the kind of talk you'd have over coffee with a friend. So let's shift gears slightly. What's a genre or book you thought you'd love, but just couldn't get into?
Oh, that's a brave question. I'll confess, I bounced off Moby Dick hard. Bounced off means I tried to engage but completely failed to connect. I respect it intellectually, but those lengthy chapters about whale anatomy felt like a reading assignment, not a pleasure.
I feel seen. I had the exact same battle with Moby Dick. I finally listened to an audiobook version and it clicked. Sometimes changing the format from paper to audio can be a game changer. It lets the musicality of the language carry you through the dense bits.
That's an excellent strategy. A game changer is something that completely alters the situation. Audiobooks also model pronunciation and intonation for English learners, so you're absorbing the rhythm of the language even if the vocabulary is challenging.
Absorbing rhythm is so underrated. Prose has a beat, and great writers are deliberate about it. In Cerulean Sea, Clune uses short, punchy sentences for humor and long, flowing ones for emotional moments. It's like a composer using dynamics.
Dynamics, the variation in loudness between notes. In writing, it's pacing and sentence length. Saint-Exupéry used incredibly simple sentences, but he'd punctuate them with profound lyrical statements that just hang in the air like a sustained chord.
Hang in the air is a phrase we use when something is left lingering or remains noticeable. A powerful line in a novel can hang in the air of your mind for days. That's the residual glow of a good book.
Residual glow. I'm pocketing that one. The aftertaste of a story is part of the experience. Sometimes I finish a book and just sit in silence for 10 minutes, processing. I feel like our culture rushes us to pick up the next thing immediately, and that's a loss.
Absolutely. We need to normalize book mourning, that little quiet space where you honor the journey you just went on. When I closed Cerulean Sea, I hugged the book, literally hugged it. My partner walked in and thought something was seriously wrong.
That's a book hanger in its purest form, and your partner probably hasn't read it yet, so they can't understand. There's a special bond between people who have both been wrecked by the same novel. It's like a secret society without the handshake.
Exactly. And that's why we press our favorite books into friends' hands with an almost desperate enthusiasm. Please read this so I have someone to talk to about it. It's a bid for connection.
A bid for connection. That's a lovely way to frame it. We're essentially saying, I want to share a piece of my inner world with you. When someone reads your recommendation and loves it, it feels like they've understood something fundamental about who you are.
And when they hate it, it feels like a personal rejection, even though rationally we know it's just a matter of taste. I recommended Cerulean Sea to my brother, and he said it was too sentimental. I had to take a deep breath and remind myself that we're still legally related.
It stings, but taste is deeply subjective. One person's sentimental is another person's heartfelt. That's why we have so many genres. The right book finds the right reader at the right moment. If the moment isn't right, no amount of insistence will force it.
No amount of insistence, that's a useful structure for learners. It means no matter how much you insist, the result won't change. It's a graceful way to concede a point, and I gracefully concede that not everyone wants a story about a magical orphanage and a gentle romance.
Though, frankly, that sounds like a universal crowd pleaser. But you're right. Forcing a book on someone who isn't receptive is like trying to plant a seed in unwatered soil. It's better to just model your love for it and let curiosity do the rest.
Modeling passion is infectious. It's why this podcast works, I hope. When we talk about what we love, our enthusiasm is contagious. And for listeners, finding a book that you feel passionate about is one of the fastest routes to improving fluency. You'll want to talk about it.
Yes, desire is the engine of learning. If you're dying to explain why the fox's goodbye wrecked you, you'll find the words, even if you have to stumble through them. The emotional urgency overrides the fear of making mistakes.
Overrides, takes priority over something else. Emotional urgency pushes perfectionism to the back seat. I've had students who were shy and hesitant, but when we started talking about a book they adored, they suddenly couldn't stop. It was transformative.
That's the dream, isn't it? To transform language practice from a chore into a natural act of sharing. So for anyone listening who feels stuck, think about the story you most want to share with a friend, and just start. The grammar will catch up.
And if you're not sure where to start, both The Little Prince and The House in the Cerulean Sea are written in accessible, clear English that still sings. They're entry points into deeper conversations about life, love, and loneliness.
And they're both mercifully short. You can finish either in a couple of days, which gives you that satisfying sense of completion. That's a big confidence booster for language learners. Checking a whole book off your list feels monumental.
Monumental, great in importance or scale. Finishing your first full novel in English is a milestone worth celebrating. I still remember my first. It was a collection of Sherlock Holmes short stories. The dense Victorian language was a struggle, but the logic of the puzzles kept me going.
Mysteries are brilliant for language learning because the plot compels you forward. You need to know what happens, so you push past unfamiliar words. That's the beauty of a page-turner. We mentioned that earlier, a book so gripping you can't stop.
And it's always good to balance page-turners with slower, more reflective books. That way you exercise different mental muscles. One builds speed and intuition, the other builds depth and nuance. It's like cross-training for your brain.
Cross-training, I like that. You wouldn't only do one exercise at the gym, so don't only read one style. Mix a thriller with a philosophical novella, a memoir with a graphic novel. Your vocabulary will expand exponentially because you're encountering language in varied contexts.
Exponentially. at a rapidly increasing rate, and your cultural understanding grows alongside it. Through books, you absorb the unspoken rules of conversation, the humor, the taboos. It's a low-stakes immersion that costs less than a plane ticket.
And you can do it curled up with a blanket. That's the ultimate low-stakes environment. Low stakes means a situation where there's little risk of failure or negative consequences. No one's grading your reading journal. It's just you and the page.
That sense of safety is vital. It allows you to take risks, like guessing the meaning of a word from context instead of running to a dictionary. And if you guess wrong, the story usually corrects you later. It's a natural, gentle feedback loop.
A feedback loop is a process where the outputs of a system are circled back as inputs. In reading, your predictions are confirmed or challenged by the narrative. When you realize you guessed a word correctly, it's a little burst of dopamine.
That rush of, I figured it out, is addictive. It's what kept me going with French, and it's what keeps intermediate English learners moving forward. Don't underestimate the power of those small victories. They snowball.
Snowball. Start small and grow larger as you go, like a snowball rolling downhill. One understood sentence becomes a paragraph, then a chapter, then a whole book. Suddenly you're thinking in English without even noticing the switch.
That's the ultimate goal, right? To stop translating in your head and just exist in the language. Books are the bridge to that state. When you're truly absorbed in a story, you're not parsing grammar, you're living it.
Living the language. That's poetry. And it brings me back to The Little Prince. The narrator crashes in the desert and repairs his plane while talking to a boy from the stars. It's surreal, but the emotional texture is so real that you live it. The desert heat, the loneliness, the wonder.
And the illustrations are part of that texture. Saint-Exupéry's watercolors are iconic. They're not technically perfect, but they carry a raw vulnerability that a polished painting might not. They're another example of how substance outshines style.
Outshines, surpasses in quality or importance. Substance over style is a classic piece of wisdom. A simple drawing of a boa constrictor swallowing an elephant that adults mistake for a hat conveys an entire philosophy about imagination and the loss of childhood wonder.
That metaphor sits at the heart of the book. Adults see a hat, the child sees an elephant digesting a snake. It's a warning against losing our ability to look beneath the surface. In our data-driven world, that message is almost more urgent now than it was in 1943.
Absolutely. We're so obsessed with measurable outcomes that we sometimes dismiss the invisible essentials: kindness, wonder, connection. A book reminds us to slow down and look with our hearts, not just our spreadsheets.
And that's exactly what Linus learns in Cerulean Sea. He arrives with his clipboard and his regulations, ready to measure everything. And the children teach him that what truly matters can't be captured in a case file. He learns to see the elephant, not the hat.
That's a brilliant parallel. I love that these two very different books, one a French fable, one a modern American fantasy, arrive at the same conclusion. It suggests that this truth is universal, and we just keep forgetting it and needing stories to remind us.
We do. Stories are our oldest form of remembering. They're the campfires we gather around, even if the campfire is now the glow of a reading lamp. And the books we choose as our favorites become a kind of personal scripture.
Personal scripture. I'd underline that if I were taking notes. It's not about religious connotation. It's about a guiding text you return to for wisdom. For me, The Little Prince is definitely that. It's a compass I recalibrate whenever I feel lost.
And the house in the Cerulean Sea is my compass pointing toward kindness, even when kindness feels difficult or undeserved. It dares to imagine a world where inclusion isn't a compromise, but a celebration. It's a radical act of hope, disguised as a cozy fantasy.
Radical hope. That's a phrase worth holding on to. When we share our favorite books with others, we're essentially passing a torch of that radical hope. We're saying, this story kept me warm. Maybe it'll keep you warm too.
Passing the torch. That's such a nurturing image, and it's the ideal note to start winding down on. So Jake, if someone listening wants to share their favorite book but struggles with the right words, what's a simple framework they can use?
Start with a single sentence that captures the feeling. This book made me feel less alone. Then describe one character or scene that did that. You don't need a sophisticated literary analysis. Just connect the story to your own life. Authenticity trumps perfection.
Authenticity trumps perfection. Trumps means beats or outranks. That should be the motto for language learners. Your genuine reaction to a book is far more compelling than a grammatically flawless but soulless summary.
Exactly. Share your favorite quote and why it hit you. That quote is a window into the book's soul and yours simultaneously. And don't be afraid to say, I'm not sure how to express this, but vulnerability in language practice invites connection.
Vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. That's a lesson books teach us over and over. Characters like Linus and the Little Prince are deeply vulnerable, and that's precisely why we love them. They're authentic.
They're authentic, and they're brave enough to care openly. So to everyone listening, be brave enough to care about a book so much that you stumble over your words explaining it. That stumble is proof that the story truly mattered.
And as you close the cover of your next read, take a moment to sit with that feeling. The story is finished, but what it's awakened in you is just beginning to stir. Carry that forward and let it shape the next chapter of your own life. Until next time, keep reading, keep feeling, and keep sharing.
And never forget what the fox taught us. What's essential is invisible to the eye. Happy reading, everyone.